Hey everybody, I am going to be recording the video of what I would have gone over in class on Monday, just so that you still got access to all this information. It's normally a very short class, so you can just watch this on your own time when you're ready to start working on the later sections of your term paper. So, the basic gist of what I wanted to go over today is to concentrate on how do you organize the overall paper. How can you like split up information or put it in blocks and so on, and then I'll talk about things you can lift out of your semester review assignment from a couple weeks ago and how to put those in here. So we'll talk about that. We'll kind of zero in on what sections and paragraphs might look like in your persuasive strategy and example argument sections, and then just a little bit about the upcoming schedule for the next few weeks. So, when it comes to organizing the term paper, this first option for organization of the whole paper, this one works for everyone, regardless of what your topics are and your specific strategies and all of that. This works for everyone. And everyone is welcome to do this one. You don't get bonus points for using a fancier version, because some of the other ones I'm going to show you are a little bit more complicated, but it doesn't like give you extra points to do those. It's more like if it happens to work out, do those instead. So this first one just basically treats the paper almost like three separate papers. This first part you've already got. You have the introduction, probably at least mentally written, if not actually written. You have the audience analysis section, probably. Some of you skipped ahead, and so if that was the case for you, just follow the directions that I gave you about what to go back and do. But for most people, you've got this audience analysis section, and that's somewhere in the neighborhood of 2 to 3 pages. And then you'll have like another 2 to 3 pages. Here are the strategies that I think you, reader, should use in this argument. And then you have another 2 to 3 pages. Here are 3 or 4 of the very best arguments that I think you should start with when you make this argument. And you can just treat them as like 3 blocks of information. Well, the idea is, and I'll talk about this a little bit more when we zero in, a B paper is going to have all of these sections. An A paper is going to have all of these sections, but the strategy and example argument sections are going to make references back to what you established about the audience. So it has to like connect back to what you established about the audience to really be like cohesive and really go from a B to an A. But if you got all of these, you're in good shape. And I do want to say one other thing about this. You can go audience, strategies, argument, or you can go audience, arguments, strategies. Either of those is totally acceptable. And then at the end, it can be like a short wrap up, indicate you're done. Include your suggested additional readings there, like a few things you can read to make sure that you're prepared to make this argument are X, Y, and Z. But that is the big block version of organizing this paper. And it is generally the simplest one because it really breaks it down into these smaller pieces and makes it feel much more manageable. Unless you have like a really compelling reason to do one of the other two I'm going to go over, just use this one. It's totally fine. Economy of effort is a great thing at the end of the semester. So feel free to use that. I'm going to show you really quickly a couple of other options though, just in case one of these happens to just work out for the way your points broke down. So in this case, instead of 3 big blocks and 3 big sections, you still keep the audience discussion first, but then you kind of alternate back and forth between here's a strategy that I think would work for this audience, and then here's an argument that uses this strategy. Here's another strategy that I think would work, and here's an argument that uses that strategy. And so you sort of pair up strategies with arguments. And I've seen some people do it with it isn't exactly that symmetrical, but like if you do pathos, here's pathos and how it works. And then here are a couple of arguments you could try that are going to be focusing on and using pathos. So it doesn't have to be exactly one. Some of them, like logic, a lot of arguments are probably going to use logic. So it's totally fine if you have like, here's your logic section, and then here's 3 arguments that use logic. That's fine too. But the idea is that instead of all the strategies being in one section and all the arguments being in another, you're kind of pairing them up and going back and forth. And for some people, this ends up being helpful because they can, like, if they knew the strategies, but they weren't sure of arguments to use, this kind of almost turns it into fill in the blank for them because then they can be like, okay, I know I'm going to tell them to use this strategy. Let me think of a few arguments that use this strategy. And that kind of helps them come up with their ideas. So that is good positive use of that option. So that is a second option that you have available, and it's just back and forth between strategies and arguments. Every once in a while, this third one works out. If your audience discussion like breaks down really easily into like 3 or 4 categories. You can actually like, here's one thing about the audience, here's a strategy that responds to that, and here's an argument that uses that strategy. And then you kind of like repeat that cycle. Well, 4-ish is usually a good number. Different like aspects of the audience that you've covered. So if it happens to break out that way, feel free to use this one. If it doesn't, please don't force this. It doesn't make the paper any better. It's really more about like, what is the information you have seem to line up with of those 3 options. So you got big blocks, that's option 1. Option 2, keep the audience discussion together and then alternate back and forth between strategies and arguments, or break it all up into sections. Something about the audience, a strategy to respond to that, an argument using that strategy, and then just repeat those again. Any of those are fine, but this is meant to just sort of give you some frameworks for thinking about how to write the rest of the paper. And then from here, um, I wanted to talk about what the strategies discussion and what the example arguments discussion is going to look like. And this is where I'll sort of reinforce the difference between a B and an A paper. So this first one, this is talking about in the section of your paper that is about persuasive strategies that you are recommending. Those are those like things like ethos, pathos, and logos and timing and things like that. What you see up on the screen has sort of like blocks of information. This first one, you identify and explain the rhetorical strategy, what it is, how it works, and so on. And you are invited to reuse what you have already done for the semester review assignment a couple weeks ago. You can take exactly what you already wrote, copy and paste it in here. That can include examples of that strategy being used and so on. Please do not, however, copy and paste directly from your article critique and then go into examples from the article, because that is not going to make sense in your term paper. And I've had a few people who do it that way. The article critique is a whole separate assignment. Please don't copy and paste that in. Just the part that explains here's what the strategy is and how it works, and cites the explanation of how that strategy works and so on. That is what you can copy and paste. So you do that, and then from there, give some examples. How could the reader of your paper apply that to the argument that they're about to make? And so the commentary on this one is a little bit longer. It's okay if the strategies discussion ends up being a little shorter than the example arguments discussion, no problem. But you do want to explain like, how would this particular strategy work in the context of the argument that you're walking your reader through? So how would they apply it? And in particular, what I'm looking for is why is this a good choice for this audience, and or how do they tailor this strategy to this audience? Like, so if they know, if you're suggesting pathos and emotional appeal. Why is that a good choice? What emotions would be good emotions to appeal to if you're going to use this? And why are those good choices for this audience? This is where you're connecting back to what you said in the first section of the paper about the audience. So that's what that second block is. So, what is the strategy? How does it work? How would you apply it in this particular argument and situation and to this audience? You do that like 3 or 4 times, and you got your persuasive strategies section done. Same basic idea for the example arguments. This is usually the one that feels the most natural to the most students. And so this is probably the part that will be, for a lot of you, the easiest part. So this is, you don't have to make every argument that there is. You pick 3 or 4 of the best arguments to use, and you're going to walk the reader through how to make those arguments. So first you're like, one of the best arguments you can use is this. You lay out the information. You're going to use information from sources to back it up with support, details, reasoning, verification that what you're saying is true, all of that. That's that first block. That's the bulk of it. Just don't forget the last step, which is, why are you choosing this particular argument for this particular audience? What makes this a good choice? We're using this one because we know from what we said earlier that the audience cares about this. Or we're using this one because we know from what we said in our earlier section that the reader is afraid, or the audience is afraid of this, and so we're helping them avoid something that they're afraid of. Like, you got to make those connections back. So it isn't supposed to be a bunch of randomly selected arguments. It should be arguments that make sense and you can justify them based on what you said about the audience earlier in the paper. Those connections back to your audience discussion, that's the difference between a B and an A, generally speaking. So you do it all, it's all in there, that's about a B. You do it all, it's all in there, and you're making connections back to the earlier sections of the paper. that's what gets you to an A, because it should all follow what you established about the audience. So, a few quick reminders before we wrap up. First, make sure you have all three of these sections. When you look at the rubric in Canvas, you'll notice if you skip a section, that's 20 points off of the grade of the paper, because all of these matter. So don't forget to talk about persuasive strategies. That's the one that seems to be the most common to get skipped. Don't skip that. That's a third of the content of your paper that's missing. You want to make sure it's in there. These should be fairly well balanced between them. I understand when persuasive strategies is a little shorter than the other two, but don't do like a paragraph of audience, a paragraph of strategies, and then 10 pages about the topic. That is not really completing the assignment like it's supposed to be done. So you need to have all three of these sections, and then you also want to make sure that they're fairly well balanced between them. When it comes to citations, and we've been talking about this off and on for quite a while, make sure that overall you have around 9 sources, and it should be 3 in each section of the paper. So 3 that are helping you talk about audience, 3 that are helping you with persuasive strategies. One of those should probably be the textbook, and then you find a couple others. There's plenty of sources online that talk about these strategies. It helps you bring in additional perspectives on the strategies to sort of flesh out your explanation of them and so on. And then 3 at least about the topic, the example argument section. This is the information about the topic your reader is arguing about. And so it's like your backup support, verification of what you're saying is true, things like that. In order for, okay, oh, sorry. You should make some recommended readings. If you forget to do this, it is not the end of the world, but that can just be a little boost that you did it. End with like, here's some other things you can read to help you get ready to make this argument. It both signals that you are not making the whole argument and that there would be more to do, and it also is just like a good wrap up. And then making sure that you have citations at the end of the paper, the full citation, and the parenthetical citations. As you use each source, you're saying which source you're using where, using parenthetical citation. You got to make sure you do both of those things. A list of URLs or links at the end is not citing sources. It has to be MLA or APA style citations. And then you have to use parenthetical citation to show which sources you are using where. If you don't do both pieces, they're not actually cited. So keep that in mind, because that is also a big chunk of the grade. And then beyond those things, it's just about the fine tuning of the grade with like, how did you connect ideas and so on. Okay, let's go over quick things about the schedule for the next few weeks. So we were going to be having class Monday, and classes are canceled. Wednesday, I'm going to be proctoring EPE exams, so I can't just move class to Wednesday, hence this video. So basically, from this point on, you are released from class time to work on your term paper, finishing it up. The term paper should be turned in by 6 p.m. on Friday, November 22nd. You see the little asterisk there. I do not take off points if this is late, but if it is late, it is at the back of the line for grading. And grading for me gets very crazy at the end of the semester. So, very often, if it's not in when I pull them before Thanksgiving break, it doesn't get graded until right around final exam day. And it probably won't have as many comments because it'll just be, there's not time to do that at the end. So if you, in particular, would like the chance to revise, if you aren't happy with your grade, turn it in by the 22nd. Because if you do, you will get it back from me around the time we come back from Thanksgiving break. And you will know exactly what your grade is. You will see how it affects your grade in the class because it'll be in Canvas. And then if you need to revise to get the grade up higher, you can do that. You will be able to take up until whatever our assigned final exam day and time is. If you miss that deadline, I would honestly just hold it and take your time and work on it until finals week, because it is very unlikely I'm going to be able to get it to you. So that's your incentive for turning it in on time. You will get the chance to know what your grade is and then revise if you need to. Also, that Monday after Thanksgiving break, we're just calling that a term paper recovery day. And so I'll be on campus. I'll be in my office all day. If you need to come by and see me or you want to work on anything, but I'm going to wait until we come back from Thanksgiving break to talk about the final reflection essay, which is what we do instead of a final exam. So normally I would be just in my office during class time, but I'm going to be proctoring EPE exams. Like there's like 12 different times over the next week and a half. So the times I will for sure be in my office are listed on here, and then I also put this in an email. And then if you there's a few other days I'm going to be around all day, but I'm going to be in and out of exams, and I don't know for sure how much of that time I will be in my office. So if you need me on a day that's not listed, just send me an email and we will see if we can figure something out, or if we have to use Zoom or something, we can find another time. But the ones on this list are the times that I will for sure be in my office and available. Okay, wrapping it up now, and then just send me emails if you have any questions.